Here we go. We're live. Yay. Okay, so welcome to Facebook Live. I'm Kara Melnick, a transformation coach and NLP practitioner. And today I have a very, very special guest with me, Jax The Heartist. And as you guys know, Jax and I ran the Breeze Retreat last year together. We have some things up our sleeve for this year. But Jax's passion is all about matters of the heart. And February is the month of love, and Valentine's Day is just around the corner. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to shift the focus inward and talk about self-love. In a world that's constantly pushing us to seek love and happiness and validation outside of our love, outside of ourselves. Sorry. Self-love is actually often a very misunderstood concept, and Jax is here to help us unpack exactly what self-love really is and to look at it how we can introduce it as a daily practice and a way of living, a mindset, something that impacts us spiritually, mentally, and physically. So whether you're single, in a relationship, or somewhere in between, this conversation will give you the tools to cultivate a more loving and fulfilling relationship with yourself and with others around you. So let's get cracking. Right. So Jax, what we're going to do is we're going to first look at what self-love really is. Let's understand it. And with the basics, how do you define self-love and why is it so important for us to talk about this topic?
Okay, first of all, Kara, thanks for the opportunity. It's fantastic to be here having this conversation with you today. And hello to everybody that's watching us and listening along to this really important conversation. So I'm going to start off with a definition from my perspective of what self-love is. And really, it's about how we prioritize ourselves, Kara. It's about whether we believe that we deserve love and deserve to love ourselves. It's about understanding what it is that we need and what it is that we want and how we actually prioritize those needs and wants. It's about knowing what ourselves well enough to know what makes us happy, what satisfies us, what brings us contentment and fulfillment and joy, and going out and doing those things with our lives. So why it's important is because if we, in the context of love, we so often look for love outside of ourselves in relationship for somebody else to give it to us. And we neglect ourselves in that process. And then when we don't get it from outside, we empty. So it's about flipping the script on that and saying, if we don't fill up our own cup and we don't learn how to love ourselves and take care of our own needs, then how can we actually love anybody else or take care of anybody else's needs? Because we just don't have it to give.
Yeah.
So
that is such a valid point. And one thing I would like to clarify as well is because a lot of people get confused between self-love and self-care, and they think that self-love could be, bubble baths and all these kind of nice things, having your nails painted and all of that. But self-love is far more than that, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what's the difference?
Totally. It's such a great question. And let me put it in context. So you're facing, let's say in your life, some significant problems, right? Like cash flow problems, relationship problems, work problems. And then you say, okay, I'm going to go take a bubble bath and pamper myself, and then the problems are still there when you come back from what in that context would actually be self-indulgence rather than self-love. So what is the most loving thing you could possibly do for yourself in that moment when you've actually got problems in your life is to sit down, admit you have problems, acknowledge the problems, understand the root cause of those real problems in your life, and start working through them. And if they're overwhelming for you, the most loving thing you can possibly do is actually go ask someone for help.
Mm.
And that's like real self-love in at essence, is what is it that I need to do for myself practically in action to actually be spiritually, emotionally, physically, and mentally sound and solid and whole and have a sense of well-being. That is self-love in
Yeah.
essence.
That is actually quite an eye-opener. I mean, it's like that, how does that saying go? Treat yourself like someone you love. So in the situation, if you were to take a step back and look at it from an outsider's perspective, if you were your friend, how would you advise yourself to look after yourself? It's not about going and avoiding life by having a bubble bath, which have a bubble bath, it's amazing, but it's not going to, it's not actually real self-love as such.
It actually just makes us feel a little bit better for a short period of time, but the
Yeah.
real problems don't actually go away. And I think that's what we need to look at is self-love is really facing yourself
Yeah.
and what is difficult and actually doing the work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is so true. So you've talked about how self-love is actually prioritizing yourself, but for someone who constantly feels guilty about putting themselves before other people or prioritizing their needs first, how would you guide them, uh, to actually, that's prioritizing yourself is actually okay.
Mm.
It's a good
So
thing.
you know that story that they always tell about the airplane when it's crashing and the air hostess guides you to say, before you put on the mask of your children, put on your own mask.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit like that, is once again, I come to if you don't love yourself, how can you be there for that's not love.
Yeah.
That's
That's true.
sacrificial. That's martyring yourself, actually. And often then you start feeling empty and dry,
Mm.
rather than this really juicy, loving, radiant being or human that then models for your children and that becomes attractive to your spouse and to the world around you. So we're actually serving the highest and greatest good of everybody when we truly love ourselves and we modeling that for our children. This is what love really is. And we're saying to our spouses, I think I'm important enough to actually take care of myself. And the funny thing about that is then that becomes a really attractive energy that draws a man to you rather than like pushes him away
Yeah.
kind of thing. So it's counterintuitive, but that's how it works.
Yeah, that is actually so true the way that you put it, but people often interpret it completely the opposite. Anyway, so let's move on to this spiritual aspect of
Mm.
self-love. So you talk about self-love as recognizing that we're not, separate to love. We are love. Love is coming from us. It's an energy,
Mm.
etc. Can you elaborate exactly what do you mean by that?
Okay, so if you understand that at essence, okay, love is actually a vibration. It's a sound and light, and that's what we are. In our purest essential form, we are sound and light. that is vibrating at a particular frequency.
Yeah.
Now, some of the high vibrational frequencies, like if you look at David Hawkins' scale of consciousness, the high vibrational frequencies are love, peace, joy, enlightenment. And at essence, that's actually who we are as human beings. But there are a couple of things that actually stop us from resonating and vibrating at that frequency. And so those are some of our human aspects. So at a spiritual level, we're love and joy and peace and enlightenment. We're light.
Yeah.
But at our human level, because of our conditioning and the way we think and our experiences, our traumas, our wounds, our fears, our personality defenses, all of those things start bringing down our frequency. And so we don't show up as this radiant light and love that in essence is who we really are.
Yeah. That is so true. Hey? It's like we were talking the other day about laughter and how you lose your ability to laugh naturally as you grow older and, start experiencing life, and you get so serious. And it's the same with love. You look at young kids, they know how to express love. They're not scared to express it, and they're more accepting of other, kids until they start becoming aware of all these other conditionings and things that we throw at them. So that's quite an eye opener as well. And how does self-love and self-awareness play a role in strengthening our connection with our highest self?
Okay.
Who we're supposed to be, I'm assuming.
Okay. So, like, when you really begin to know yourself, like, your values, what's important, you know what you like, what you don't like, what your passions are, what your strengths are, what pisses you off, what makes you happy. And you come to accept yourself because you know yourself, and you're like, that's who I am. And you get comfortable in your skin. And so you're not trying to be somebody else. You just show up as yourself, and you can be true to yourself, and you can live in alignment with what's really important to you. And the better you know yourself, the more connected you are to who you are, why are you here. And then you start making decisions and taking action in ways that serve you and that are supportive of you, rather than ways that diminish you or drain you. So you start making your decisions accordingly based on who you know yourself to be. If you don't know yourself that well, it's easy for things like self-doubt to creep in, for fears to creep in, for all sorts of like funny kind of energies and obstacles to actually living out your truth.
Yeah, that is so true. And then you can't make decisions and you don't feel confident, etc., because that's so. What are some practical ways that we can, introduce or deepen our spiritual self-love journey?
Okay. So, I mean, the way from a spiritual perspective is around letting go all of those things that are not self-loving, right? And identifying them and dissolving them or working through them or transforming them. So on my own personal, I can only talk about my own personal spiritual journey and some of the things that I've done. And that's been writing or journaling in a sort of self-reflective practice, using inquiry, questioning, sitting with questions and then seeing what information comes up. Prayer or meditation really takes you into that sort of space of connecting with yourself. And love is that open communication that we actually have with our higher selves, where we can access more information about ourselves. A breath work sometimes is a way when stuff comes up to bring up some of those parts of ourselves that keep us disconnected or separate from our loving selves. One of my personal favorites is creative art or art process work, where I
Mhm.
can just in a meditative way dump it onto the canvas and then see what's there.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the easiest ways to actually access our unconscious in a fun, playful way. And then some somatic practices, things like yoga, you will be able to feel where are you holding the stuckness in your body, or other somatic kind of practices, dancing. Those are different ways we can connect with ourselves um, at a spiritual level. Yeah.
Right. So let's move on to the mental and psychological barriers to self-love.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have briefly touched on negative self-talk, limiting beliefs, etc. How do we start shifting these internal scripts?
Yeah. I think the first thing is really to become aware, to observe the stories we tell ourselves and the way we tell our stories. How do we talk to ourselves about ourselves? Like, are you saying, oh, I'm an idiot? Or, geez, I messed up? Or I'm such a failure? Or I can't do this? Or I'm not good enough? That's a popular one I hear all the time. So there are all of these
Yeah,
kind of thoughts and beliefs that, like, we say them all the time thinking they're truth because we're resonating with them and they feel true to us. But if you just take a step back and you observe that that's a script, okay, it's an internal script that's been written as a story, and that you're the author, you're the one who wrote the story.
yeah,
So you have the opportunity in terms of reaching choice points to say, I want to write a different story. I want to be writing a new script. And then you can literally go and rewrite your story in a way that says, what are the empowering statements and serving beliefs that I want to start speaking to myself instead? And that is a conscious choice. Like when you start taking radical responsibility for your script and how you speak to yourself, you get to choose something else that's better for you.
yeah. That is actually so empowering and
Yeah.
encouraging. Like, um, there was a time in my life that I thought that I was stuck in, my script that was running around in my head, and that's what I believed, and that's how I would stay for the rest of my life. And it's such great news that you can actually rewrite that, and start living a completely different life. So
Mm.
let's talk about self-compassion and its role in self-love. What are some ways that we can practice self-compassion when we have those moments of self-doubt and fear?
So I think the first thing is to have a list of those positive statements, right? It's like when you find yourself triggered into those old patterns and you're observing it. And then you've got a list of positive, empowering statements that you can go to and say, okay, I don't like the way I'm talking to myself. Let me just choose something else,
Yeah.
right? That is much more serving. And then you start training your brain to speak to yourself differently just by having easy access to that.
Mm.
And then just wearing rose-colored glasses, like softer glasses. I think as human beings, we are incredibly hard on ourselves. We are conditioned by society to perform from the youngest age. From when we're very little, we're taught to be hard on ourselves
Yeah.
and to judge ourselves, because I think that's sometimes how we parented, or in the past,
Yes.
maybe not so much anymore, but in the past, and for our generation, Caro, that's how we were raised,
That
is
is so true.
do
And
better, be better,
and you
perform more.
you have to pass your exams and your tests, and failure is just the biggest disaster on this planet. Sure.
Exactly. And my mom, like I remember my mom saying to me, I got 98% on a test. And she said, what happened to the other 2%? And it's like, and see how that kind of early experience would set you up to feel nothing's ever good enough and
Absolutely.
to be striving and performing and being hard on myself. And so I've had to learn to be much more gentle. It's taken a long time and much more compassionate and much kinder to myself and give myself permission to rest
Yeah.
and pause and breathe and pace myself at my own pace and not try to keep up with the rest of society.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's so true. And it's also great news, that we can learn to get out of that. But I think, what it's going to be hard work to start because it's almost like creating a totally different and a new way of life and new habits that you're bringing into your life to create a life of self-love and to look after yourself.
yeah.
Um,
So sorry to interrupt you. I think it starts with permission.
yeah,
You know, to really give ourselves permission
yeah,
to actually be kind to ourselves
that's true.
and to do things in a new way.
Yeah, that's true. It's like become aware of it, then decide that you're actually going to make this change and give yourself permission, to change. You don't have to stay in that stuck way of life that you've had. And
Exactly.
even if you're like our age, a little bit older, we can still actually, once we become aware that this is how we're behaving and that we're not acting in a with self-compassion, we can still, at our age, learn new habits and start living a more authentic life,
Yeah.
not driven by society's expectations and by, what we've been told how we need to do things our whole time.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
what I also want to say though is like from a parenting perspective, if we're talking about our age,
Mm,
but for younger women, if they're watching this,
yes.
it's like to show up like with more spaciousness for your children, like when you're more gentle with yourself,
Yeah.
um, you create a much more loving, safe, supportive environment in which you're raising those children so they don't have to then go through what we've been through. So give yourself permission to do that now so that we break the cycle and
Yes.
we model something different for our children and the next generations to come.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, forgiveness is another crucial element.
Mm.
Why is it so difficult for us to forgive ourselves? And how can we begin that process?
You don't ask me easy questions, do
No,
you, Caroline?
we're not coming here for the easy stuff.
Okay. So, um, you know what, like I said, I think the way we were raised, our conditioning
Mm,
was in a very sort of tough, critical, judgmental, blame-based environments. And so we've been socialized to be hard on ourselves. It's deeply wired into our psyches.
mm.
And so it's important to give ourselves a break from self-judgment and also to recognize we're only human. Okay. We
Yeah,
all make mistakes, we all mess up, we're all learning. Um, you'll know this as an NLP practitioner. There is no failure, only feedback. So
yeah,
when we mess up, it's an opportunity to learn and grow. So it's a way of looking at ourselves and how we do life. Um, and not to say, oh, I did something wrong, I'm bad. Once again, that's scripting.
yeah,
I'm a failure. I'm an
yeah,
idiot. Those negative thoughts, but to
yeah,
say, okay, I'm learning, I'm growing. I did the best at the time with what I knew. We always, as human beings, are doing the best we can at the time with what we know and who we are. And if we knew better, we'd do better.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, so let's look at some emotional healing and self-love because emotions, sure, they can sometimes feel like huge roadblocks to self-love. How can we use our triggers um, for healing rather than letting them define us?
Okay. So what we need to understand about emotions is there are actually energy in motion. It's an emotion, it's energy in motion.
Mm.
And so when an emotion is triggered in your body, what it actually is an energy constriction or a blocked energy in your body. Okay. Now, when you understand it like that, it's okay. Well, how do I work with, play with that energy? What is it that I can do to resolve it or dissolve it or integrate it or release it or whatever it needs or let it go? How do I process that emotion? But first, there's a process and we can speak about it and I can share that with you. It's about recognizing that there's some work still to be done when you get triggered. It's
Mm.
like an entry point. It's showing you, like, if you're angry or
Mm.
you're fearful or you're grieving or you are feel guilty. Those are just the emotions. It's stuck energy in your body that needs to be processed. When
And
you understand that,
yeah, the emotions need to get out. Mm. Have we lost Jax or have we lost me? Okay, it seems like we've lost Jax. We'll maybe give it a few minutes. Yeah, to see if she can come, rejoin us. Hello, Jax.
I'm here again.
I
Sorry, I'm
wasn't
not
sure
sure what
if it was
happened.
me or if it was you that got lost there.
Don't know. Something
Okay.
about the emotions, like just cutting the
Yeah.
connection, which is what can happen is when we've got unprocessed emotions, it cuts off our connection from the
Yeah.
love that we are. There was a living example of what happened.
Okay, so right. So we were talking about emotions, and you were talking about how self-love involves recognizing and processing our emotions rather than suppressing them. What steps can we take to, if we're overwhelmed with negative feelings, what can we do to actually process and work that out? You were about to tell us the
Mm.
process, and then we lost you.
Okay, so that's telling us exactly. It's like stop.
Yeah,
Just stop whatever you're doing. If you've been triggered by a conversation with somebody else, or you're in the middle of something, working on something, and you get frustrated and you can't keep going, just stop.
yeah,
Take a pause. Okay. Go outside into nature. Like that's one of my go-to solutions for anybody, for anything, any emotion, is get outside. Go near a tree because those energies are very supportive in helping us process our emotional stuff. And then I'd sit underneath the tree or on the grass and just close your eyes. Okay. And then tune your awareness inwards. Okay. And then start doing a body scan. So you're just gently coming into awareness of your physical body. And you're just noticing what's happening in your physical body. Like, what are you feeling? What is your felt sense? And you're looking for where is it tingly? Where is it prickly? Where is it tight? Where is it jabbing? Like, where is it tense? Like, where's uncomfortable? And you just then tune your awareness further into that place. And you just breathe. You sit and you breathe and you're sitting with your emotion.
yeah,
What we tend to do is we tend to avoid it or
yeah,
bypass or watch Netflix or binge on food or do whatever it is that we do, so that we don't have to feel the emotion, but it doesn't go away.
Mm-mm.
So it's just coming into communion with that emotion and giving it attention and feeling it. You literally are feeling, that discomfort in your body. Okay.
Mm.
And then if you want, you can come into a conversation with it. So you can start saying, okay, I see you, and you can give it a name.
Yeah.
Okay, I see you, anger, and you can see, what does it look like? And you can even visualize that and give it a face, right? Then you start working with it and you ask it, what is its message for you? What does it want you to know? And see what information is actually held in your body around that emotion.
Mm.
Why is it there? What is its message for you? What does it want you to know? Because those emotions are actually there to help you. Anger,
Yeah.
let's use anger as an example. Anger is your body's way of telling you somebody has crossed a boundary.
Mm.
They've compromised a value. There's something that they're doing that you don't like, that's not good for
Yeah.
you, and that's you angry. So it's about listening and understanding why is that it's actually to protect you and keep you safe. So yeah, and then once you've
Yeah.
heard the message and you've just stayed with it, what will normally happen is the emotion will pass on its own. You don't have to fix it or control it or change it or make it go away. It won't go away on its. All you need to do is give it the attention it's asking for. And what happens is it starts as whispers, and if you ignore the emotions long enough, they start becoming roars.
And it can
Yeah.
also manifest in physical, illnesses and conditions.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's what normally happens when we suppress it
Yeah.
and we avoid it, is it actually will show itself, but in a different way. Illness or disease is its way of trying to get your attention,
Yeah.
actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is very interesting. And then we just treat the symptoms and hope we
With
get
a
better.
pill.
Yeah. Pop some pills.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
let's talk about trusting ourselves, which is part of the self-care, self-love process. And how can we strengthen our intuition and start, learn to trust our intuition, our gut instinct, our ability to make decisions more deeply.
Mm. So, Carol, I answer that like this. It's like it's a relationship, right? Um, your relationship with yourself is like any other relationship.
Yeah.
Okay. It's something that takes time to build. It's something that you have to invest your energy in. You've got to spend time in conversation with yourself. You've got to make space for that. You've got to start learning to tune into your body, to listen to those small cues, because that's how your intuition actually works. Is it's talking through body language, like felt senses in your body.
Mm.
Like a yes, you'll feel a yes, and a no, you'll feel a no. But if you ignore it and you override it with your head, you start breaking down that trust between you and your intuition because you're not listening to it. So
Yeah.
it's like learning to tune into that little voice, and come into that connection. It's like making space to feed that connection and spend quality time. And it's like the 5 love languages. It's like quality time, you know, uh,
Yeah.
words of encouragement or affirmation, acts of service. We got to do this for ourselves.
Sure. I never
Give
thought of it that way.
occasionally.
It's
Starts with
really,
us.
it's such a good point. Okay, so actions. So the physical part of self-love and the actions that we take, how does physical well-being reflect our self-love practice?
Okay, well, when we're not loving ourselves, often we are, let's look at it that way. You'll
Yeah,
find you de-energized, you feel stuck, you feel depleted, you are anxious, you might be feeling anxious, you might be feeling depressed, because all of the life force has gone out of you.
yeah,
So when you're loving yourself, you're really filling up your tank again. You're infusing life force into your bones, into your bloodstream, into your heart, into
yeah,
your liver. You're putting it all into your organs. You're feeding your organs. That's what self-love is actually doing. You're feeding yourself. You're nourishing and nurturing yourself. And when we're well fed and we take care of ourselves, we're vibrant and we're alive and
yeah,
we're energized and we're joyful and we are impactful. Just by, you can walk into a room and before you've even opened your mouth, like people can feel that frequency of love.
sure.
And for me, that is the impact at a physical, real world level of loving yourself.
Yeah,
Is just your vibration actually has an impact when you walk into the room.
sure. That is so true. So let's talk about boundaries and setting boundaries as being a part of your, self-love. And how can we become more comfortable with saying no when necessary, but, in a kind and authentic way?
So I think, Cara, it comes back to what I said right at the beginning. Um, it's around whether you believe you deserve in life. It's how much you value yourself.
Yeah,
Because if you truly valued yourself, setting boundaries would be really easy. You know, if you knew you were important, if you knew that you mattered, if you cared about yourself, like at a really deep level, it wouldn't be a hard thing to say, no, I'd really love to help you, but unfortunately, right now, I'm not in a place where I can do that. I need to
that
give
is,
to myself right now.
that is very interesting because, like, a lot of us have been conditioned that we've got to, especially if you've been brought up in a conservative environment. And I know that I was brought up in a very religious and Christian environment, and you conditioned that you must think of other people and do things for other people before you look after yourself. And the problem is that
Mm.
so that's why it creates a situation where you're constantly giving, and you're not setting those boundaries. So when someone comes and asks you to do something and to help them, you can't say no. And I think that that's created
Yeah.
quite a lot of conflict with this self-love, and yet you've got to
Mm.
give all the time. And it's
Yeah.
so true what you say. I come from that background where it's been very difficult for me to set boundaries and to say no, because I've been taught that I must always try and help everybody.
Mm.
And it becomes exhausting. And you can't actually, there comes a point in time where you do really have to say no because you can only give so much. Um,
Yeah.
so it's a very, yeah, I find that extremely interesting that if you really do truly love yourself and you're confident in who you are, you wouldn't have a problem saying no. And it's
Yeah.
really true.
So I want to come back to that point about knowing yourself
Yeah,
and why that's so important, right? And knowing where your limitations are. Because if you really know yourself, you know when you're feeling exhausted and you know when you're empty and you know when you don't have the capacity. And
yeah,
so if you were honest with yourself, if you really knew yourself and you honored yourself and valued yourself,
yeah.
then that conditioning, that earlier childhood conditioning,
Mhm.
what we taught to believe, which is actually faulty belief, right? That we need to serve other people before ourselves. It's a deep conditioning, um, and we can serve, but maybe not today.
Yeah.
and maybe not everybody.
Yeah.
And that's about like discernment, right? And being clear. Once again, knowing yourself. Who
Yeah.
am I and why am I here and who am I here to serve? And serve those people. And how do I do it in a way that is coherent and balanced and healthy because that serves everybody.
Yeah.
Because the quality of then what you're giving is a much higher vibration than when you scattered and depleted and over promising, and then you let people down and you disappoint them, and that's not good for anybody, is it?
Yeah. No, no, absolutely not.
Yeah.
So I think let's move on to some myths about self-love and
Yeah.
the myths and misconceptions. And the first one that I want to talk about is that self-love is selfish. And how can we reframe that? That if you self-love, if you love yourself, then you're being selfish. Is that true? And
So I'm going to go a little bit deeper on this one, because so what? So what if you are being selfish?
mm,
Like there's an underlying assumption that being selfish is bad. Who says? Who says that being selfish, what does that even mean to be selfish? We've judged that. And sometimes it's good to be
okay.
selfish, to put yourself first, to prioritize yourself. That's what being selfish is.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily a bad thing, but we're conditioned to believe that it's bad.
Sure, that is a very interesting perspective. I haven't thought about that because I was also brought up again to believe that you must never be selfish. Never, 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 never. That's like
Hmm.
one of the unpardonable sins in life is being
There
selfish.
are times and places where it's important to be selfish.
Sure. Okay. That's very
Like it
interesting.
serves everybody. It serves your well-being. It serves your children. Let's talk about raising children.
Mm,
Like, is it selfish not to do everything for your children? Sometimes, if you don't do things for them, they have to step into their own sovereignty, their own autonomy, their own capability, and their own
yeah.
independence. And so it's about understanding that there's a perfection
Mm,
in listening to what's good for you, like by design. If it's good for you, it's actually good for the system. They might not see it in that moment. They might get pissed off, or because we teach them bad habits. And then when we want to change those habits, there's sometimes a backlash that they want to keep the pattern in place. But
okay.
it's actually healthier for the whole system when we correct, to say, if I look after myself and you look after yourself, and yes, we can support one another's needs when we have the capacity to do that, and we can
Yeah.
support each other when we have capacity, but not as a habit, not as I'll always be the one who's doing everything for you and nobody does anything for me. That's martyrdom.
Yeah, I think that's another topic for another day entirely.
Another topic for another day.
Okay, so selfishness is in some contexts is actually important. Um, but self-care is looking after yourself and loving yourself is not an act of selfishness. It's essential actually for your survival and for you to have the best impact as a mother, as a father, as a colleague at work or an employer, etc. Um,
Mm,
and I think that that's an important mindset and concept that we need to get our minds around.
mm,
Um, so another myth about self-love is that, and this one, I know where this one comes from, is that you can't fully love somebody else until you learn to love yourself. Do you think that that is 100% true? Or do you think that even though you haven't quite figured out how to love yourself in entirety, you can still love people around you? I think for children, if you have a child, that's easy to love a child. It's programmed in you to love your child, but to love the people around you, your partner, your family, etc., your friends, is it possible to love them even though you haven't fully discovered how to love yourself yet?
Yeah, look, I think it's possible to love anybody if you choose to love, enter a relationship and have children. For me, what's important is discernment again.
Mm.
It's if you attract people in relationship, okay,
Yeah.
that people will mirror you. Okay, where you are, they'll mirror your patterns, they'll reflect back to you where your wounds are and where your work is. They'll trigger you, whether it's your children or your partners or your spouse or your friends. That's what relationship is about. It's actually about mirroring for
Yeah.
us and triggering.
Yeah.
Uh, I think the discernment is that somebody, I'm talking about romantic relationships now.
Yeah.
If I'm going to get into a romantic relationship with someone, is this someone who will be able to heal together and learn to love ourselves and each other on the journey?
Yeah.
Okay, that's going to be a positive healing experience. Or is this someone who's just going to trigger my wounds and trigger my wounds and trigger my wounds, and it's going to be a painful
Yeah.
experience? So it's about learning and it comes back to self-worth, and saying, how much do I value myself? And then being able to discern, like, is this somebody I'm going to be able to grow and learn and heal with? And this is where if you trust your intuition,
Yeah.
you'll know.
So all these aspects are so intertwined. It's not like a checklist that you can start. Okay, I'll start doing number one, like a flow chart. Number one, then it
Yeah.
leads to number two. You've got to almost work on all these aspects together because they work so closely together. And what would be interesting is, maybe it's a topic for another day, but how do you discern or see the difference, recognize the difference between someone who's draining you of who you are, versus someone who's actually growing with you? Because I don't think anybody's ever perfect, and I don't think anybody
Yeah.
will ever fully understand how to love themselves. It's a continuous process that you have to work on for the rest of your life. So
Yeah.
you are going to get into that relationship, and how can you figure out what those red flags are so that you don't get yourself too deeply into a relationship that's going to be destructive?
So I'll use my own example because I think that's the best way to describe it. I kept on getting into relationships with emotionally unavailable men,
Yeah.
and it was painful. And I kept on never receiving the love that I wanted. And after about the fourth kind of relationship and lots of failed relationships, I made a decision and I said, I am not going to get into another relationship unless it's the one with a man who values me the way I deserve to be valued and treats me in the way that I want to be treated. And if that means I have to be on my own for the rest of my life and create a joyful life that
Mm.
is full and rich and rewarding and satisfying, then so be it. But I'm not prepared to compromise. And I think I did a course and I worked through all the earlier childhood wounding and the resonance of the old patterns. And I worked hard to get to that
Yeah.
point where I made that decision. And it wasn't long after that that I actually met my partner that I'm with now. So,
Yeah.
sometimes it's better to actually do the healing work for yourself
Yes.
first. I'm not saying you have to be fully healed, but I'm saying do the work so that you don't have to keep on repeating the same patterns over
Yeah.
and over again, because
Yeah,
that's painful.
I agree with you. And also, it's a combination of that and also having a very clear idea of what you're looking for and what you really don't want, like reflecting on your past relationships that haven't worked and see, okay, what actually were the red flags in those relationships so that you can pick them up much quicker in a future relationship. I think that's important, You
Yeah.
have to look back to move forward
Yeah.
sometimes.
I think there's another thing, Caro, is if you can ask yourself the question, would I want to be in a relationship with me?
Mm.
Okay. And if you wouldn't, then there's still work to be done.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Because that tells you how much you love yourself, right? Is if you'd want
Yeah.
to be in a relationship with yourself.
And I
Do
think
you like
it also helps you identify the areas where you do need to do some work.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, very interesting. Okay, so some people also believe this is the third myth, that if you love yourself, you're going to be happy all the time. So is this the case? But life will always bring you tough moments and you always have challenges. I mean, like it goes through waves where you've got ups and downs, swings and roundabouts. How can
Hmm.
you keep loving yourself even though the times are tough? Have you got any tips for us?
Well, firstly, people who are always happy all the time, I don't know if I trust them. Because I don't think it's real.
Yeah.
I don't think
Okay.
anybody can be happy all of the time. I think life will bring us tough moments and challenges and growth points, and it'll stretch us. That's life.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and there's an authenticity in admitting that, yeah, I'm having not such a good day. So I think to have grace, self-compassion, grace with yourself in the
Mhm.
tough moments, to know that we're all just doing the best we can, like I've spoken about before, to remind yourself that you're only human. And then I think in the moments that are tough is like leaning on your support structures, your
Yeah.
friends, and being vulnerable with them and honest about saying, "Oh, I made such a big mess up. I made such a big mistake, and I feel like such a failure and such an idiot." And the people who love you will say, "Ah, you're the greatest, you're the best, and I love you so much." And to call on when you can't love yourself is to call on the people who do love you, to hold you through those tough times and difficult moments. I think that's been my saving grace
Yeah.
throughout my life.
Awesome.
Yeah, and if you don't have those people, there are lots of people like us who are available to hold space and to support you through tough times.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we're coming to the end of our talk, our discussion here. What I want to talk about now is how we can actually make self-love a lifelong journey. It's actually a lifelong practice. And what advice would you have for someone who's only starting out on their self-long love journey? Any tips, any advice?
I think the first is just to sort of acknowledge where you are,
Mm,
okay, and remembering that there's the spiritual, the emotional, the mental, and the physical aspects of self-love. So to maybe just look at each of those aspects and sort of say, okay, how well do I know myself? How much do I value myself? on a scale of 1 to 10, sort of do a little math for
Yeah.
yourself. Emotionally, how good am I with managing my emotions when I'm triggered? The mental stuff is, what does my script sound like?
Yeah.
How kind am I to myself? How compassionate am I to myself? Um, and then physically, what am I taking care of myself fundamentally? I mean, we never spoke about this, but some of the ways to really care for yourself, which is not bubble baths and
Mm.
spa days, is to rest, movement or exercise,
Yeah.
breathing. What are some of the others? Hanging around with people that uplift you and energize you, setting clear boundaries. So just looking at some of the physical things and whether you're actually practicing those, and sort of give yourself, where am I on a scale of 1 to 10 overall?
Yeah.
And then sort of start saying, okay, which area, where's my entry point? Like
Mm.
which part, sit with yourself and say, where do I want to start? Let me just choose one area where I actually want to see a change.
Yeah.
And like, if I had to say, where do you start, is really valuing yourself, putting yourself first, telling yourself, I deserve this.
Yeah.
I'm important. I matter. So it's prioritizing yourself, and then everything else. As soon as you've prioritized yourself, then you'll start doing the stuff that you need to do to love yourself.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got Valentine's Day coming up in on Friday this week. What
Mm.
is one self-love practice that you would encourage our listeners to do for themselves on Valentine's Day?
So this is my theme of the year, my theme of the month. Um, I would say go play. Give yourself permission to play in some way. We spoke about taking life so
Yeah,
seriously
yeah,
and how we've forgotten to laugh. And I think part of loving ourselves is loving our inner child, that very young part of ourselves that often gets neglected and abandoned and forgotten. And there's nothing more joyful and lighter than play. So it's playing whatever way feels good to you.
yeah,
For me, it's taking out my pencils or my paints, and but it can be go kick a ball with your children or with yourself, or play dress up, or plan a fun date with your partner, or whatever
yeah,
feels like play to you.
yeah,
Have a pillow fight, something that's light and silly. Um, but yeah, to connect with that um, inner part of yourself, that little child.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Be
so
my advice.
cool. That's so cool. And guys, if you want to take this to heart, we'd love to hear how you've played and enjoyed yourself and prioritized your self-love on Valentine's Day this year, or any day actually, because this is a lifestyle. It's something that you have to start practicing every day. And Jax, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to have this conversation. It's really been extremely enlightening, and for sharing your wisdom on self-love and inner healing. It really has been quite amazing. And I know that I'm going to go back and I'm going to replay this video because there was just so much information crammed into one small, few minutes that we had. But before we wrap up, tell our listeners, where can they find you and connect with you and learn more about your work?
Okay, so one of the first places that people can go, I'm just looking for, okay, is my website, which is www.jaxtheartist, THEARTIST.co.za. You can find me on my socials, which are, I think, Cara, if you can just pop them
I'll just
into the
pop,
link at the bottom of this video rather than me trying to ramble them off, it'll be
yeah,
easier. And then also, if you want to WhatsApp me, if you're interested in a self-love repatterning, so I work with something called resonance repatterning, and I do have a self-love repatterning. So if that's something you want to go deeper, that's also available. So you can just WhatsApp me and we can set up an appointment. And then the other thing I wanted to speak about is I'm working on the ultimate guide to overcoming self-doubt. So we spoke about self-doubt and shifting
That
those
sounds
mental
amazing.
patterns. So that'll be coming out in March 2025. We're working on it
Yay.
right now. Yeah.
Okay, so then we're going to do a self-doubt session. That sounds amazing. Well
Exactly.
done.
Exactly. Thank
Okay,
you.
so what I'll do is I'll pop the links into the comments box. So if any of you guys want to connect with Jax, she's absolutely awesome. Resonance repatterning was something that I didn't even know existed, and she can share with you. I think maybe sometime we should do a little chat about exactly what it is and how it works, to create more awareness around it, because I feel it's something that a lot of people could benefit from. And
Mm.
to all you guys out there, our followers, our friends, our colleagues, we really, really appreciate you. And thank you for taking the time to listen to this video. Remember that self-love is essential. And even if you are a bit selfish at times, there are contexts where it is relevant. Um, Look after yourself, care for yourself. You have value and you're here for a purpose. And to be the best version of yourself, the best mom, the best dad, you need to take some time out to work on self-love. And it is a journey that you'll take. So next week we are going to hop on again live and we're going to talk about how self-love can be a mindset, eh? What were the words? It's self-love as a mindset. So that is going to be an interesting discussion. Um, anyway, so take time for yourself, take time to nurture yourself, embrace who you are, let self-love be the foundation of everything else that you do in life. And if you enjoyed today's conversation, please share it, subscribe to our newsletters. We'll give you all the links, newsletters, our YouTube channel, TikTok, wherever you can find us, we're there. Yeah, and let us know if there are any interesting topics that you'd like to hear from us, because we're here to add value, to help you grow. And Jax, do you want to mention quickly what little surprises we have up our sleeve for September?
Okay, first, let me say that I always love our conversations. I find them so enlightening as well. And it's just fun to be here with you and to share all of this amazing information with your viewers. So thank you for the opportunity to be here with you
Thank
and
you.
connect with you. And Karen and I have done a few of these, and we seem to love working together. And so sort of arising from our Breathe retreat in December last year, we decided that we're going to do something a little bit of a stretch. And we are putting together an amazing soul healing adventure in September 2025. And we are taking a group of wonderful, special people to Bali and on a 15-day soul healing adventure. So it's a little bit of as a concept, it's a combination of really experiencing some of the activities and the tours in Bali, to see the culture and how the Balinese people actually live and their mindsets and their way of life, because they're very, very spiritual, loving people. So it would be amazing to actually hang out with them and see the way they think and what they believe and why they live the way they live. The next piece is actually very sort of deliberate kind of healing experiences that will help you let go of some of the wounding that we spoke of, shift some of the mindsets and the belief systems, and like come into wholeness. And the last part is really taking some time to rest and just do whatever it is that you want to do and engage with the culture in the way that you want to, or just take time for yourself and connect with the people who are on the journey with us. So it really is about coming into community and traveling together in a shared experience. So for people who want to travel, who have Bali on their bucket list, but don't have anyone to go with, it's for you. If you are going through some sort of major life transition at the moment, you're retiring, you're empty nesting, you've ended a relationship, or you are getting divorced and you just need some sort of support and change in your life, but you're also a free spirit and you're up for an adventure, any life transition, this is for you. We're designing it for you. So we'd love to hear whether you're coming along or you're interested in coming along the journey with us.
So we're busy putting all the information together and the pricing and all of that. If you are interested in it, please pop, a comment in the comments box and we'll pick it up. We're busy creating the website where you can subscribe to the information, and we're going to put all the information on there. So within the next week or two, we will have everything available for you to look at, but it is going to be something different. So it's not just the touristy, we want to create an experience that is going to leave a lasting impression, and it's going to be a soul healing adventure. So that's the most important thing that needs to come out of it, is that you're going to arrive one person and you're going to leave healed, and you're going to play and have fun. So we're really, really excited, and we'll share the information with you as it unfolds. Okay, so thanks, everybody. Have you got anything else you'd like to share, or yeah?
I just love you and love you all.
Love you too. Anyway, bye.
Thanks, Tara.